Hello and welcome to another edition of It's a Woman's World. We are here to bring forth some of Minnesota's legends, a legend who has changed the game. And many say behind every good woman is the women who came before her. Actually, my mother said that. And she reminds me that in order for you to be a good, solid woman, you have to be groomed by other good, solid women. Well, we have a good, solid legend with us today, and we are honored to celebrate Black history. We are honored to celebrate women's history. We are honored to celebrate those who are pioneers in places where women did not go. And here today, we have a legend, and we're honored. I am your host, Jamila Pettiford, and let me start by introducing my co hosts. Let's start first with Barbara Lavalure. Good morning.
Hello and good morning to you, Jamila, and to all our viewers. Great to be here today, and I am very excited about this particular person and guest today.
And so am I. Thank you, Barbara. We have Candy Pettiford. Good morning.
Oh, good day to you. This is a great day, and I'm excited. Are you ready, Miss Montgomery?
I'm ready.
And the lady of the hour, the one and the only, Deb Montgomery. Welcome, Deb. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invite. I'm very honored to be here with you.
Yes, well, I'm honored because I've known you all my life. And what's so beautiful about knowing you is that you are an encourager. You are a person who inspires, especially young women like me, who has looked up to you directly, indirectly. You have been around and in my village. I want to thank you for all the ways that you have encouraged me through the years. And I'm also very proud of you, very proud of the way that you carry yourself and all of the honor and badges that you carry. And yet you're still so very humble. And I appreciate that. Would you tell us? I mean, you are a Rondo legend. Tell us a little bit about growing up in the historic Rondo community and what that meant to you as a young woman.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me today and to share my story. I'm a product of Rondo, and growing up in Rondo, in the real Rondo, it was a village, and everybody in the village took care of you. And if you're young and somebody sees you doing something wrong, they'd say, "Young lady, what family do you belong to?" And if you didn't not respond, you responded to adults talking to you, and you tell them which family you belong to, and they say, "Well, that's not appropriate behavior, and I don't want to see you do that again." And you say, "Yes, ma'am," and then you move on. But I mean, that's the kind of upbringing and support that the Rondo community gave to the young people and to each other, so that we were very supportive. It was a very supportive and uplifting environment, and people cared about you. And if you didn't have something and your neighbor had it, they would share it with you. And when you were able to pay them back, you paid them back. It wasn't like, nobody cared about what was going on. We knew that as the village, we had to support each other. So that's what I grew up in that environment.
Yes. And you can tell.
Thank you.
Well, Debbie, I was so impressed when I started reading about you, having never met you personally. But oh my goodness, the first question I have is about how in the world does a 17-year-old young Black woman from the Rondo neighborhood in St. Paul, Minnesota, be elected to a national NAAC board? How did that happen?
Well, thank you for that. First of all, I grew up in St. Philip's Episcopal Church with with Father Denzel Carty. And it was an environment where every Sunday besides the homily, we would get insight on our families that were down in the South and the things they were going through. So at the age of 13, I became president of the NAACP youth group up here. And, and Allie Mae Hampton was the advisor to the youth group. And so we would collect money, and then I would be able to go to the national conventions with Miss Hampton and, learn and listen to what was really going on during that period of time. And the 60s, as we're all aware, was very turbulent and engaging for civil rights and the things like that. So after I was meeting all of the different people there, people would always say, "Who's this high yellow girl from Minnesota out here raising all this sand?" Because I was learning and I was challenging and questioning. And then when I became 17, they have one seat on the national board that actually was set there for college students. And that the young people all gathered behind me and said, "We want you to run for the national board." So I said, okay. Wow. So I ran for the national board. And at the age of 17, I got elected to the national board. So I was blessed to be able to sit on the national board with Roy Wilkins, Margaret Bush Wilson, and Thurgood Marshall was our attorney at the time. So to listen to the discussions that were going on in those rooms, especially during that time, and being engaged on all of the issues, and the NAACP pushing for law changes down south and everywhere else. So it kind of engendered me to want to become a lawyer, is what I was originally thinking about in my early years.
Well, what was your family like? What was your growing up like that you really, it kind of forced you to, or not forced you, but pulled you forward to say, I want to do this. I want to be in politics or whatever. What was your family like? Mom, dad? I mean, give us a little something.
Well, I was adopted by my grandparents. So I was raised by my grandparents. My grandmother was matron in the bathroom down at the depot. My grandfather was captain of the Red Caps. And in the Rondo neighborhood, the two, quote, best paying jobs for Americans at the time was working for the railroad or working at the packing house. And so, like I say, I grew up running through the Union Depot down there. I mean, I knew where all the cracks and crevices were because, I'd go down with my grandparents and hang around like kids would do and ask questions and meet people coming and going. So, that was some of the upbringing that I had. And then, like I say, the village was around me all the time. The Jackmans lived next door, the Wheats across the street. So, I mean, everybody knew everybody. So it wasn't like I was a stranger, and the village was very encompassing, and my family was very supportive. My grandmother was from Kentucky. My grandfather was from Lubbock, Texas. So I had this Southern ginger about me that was around me, and all of the conversations that were coming from families, throughout the country that were dealing with the issues that were going on back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned two things, like the packing house and you said also the railroad or whatever. Both my family came from both of those areas, so I do understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, those were the jobs that paid us the most money and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, it's so wonderful too, Deb, is you hold a title in Minnesota that I think will go, I know for a fact, will go down in the history books forever and ever. Oh, man. And one of those titles is the first female officer in the state of Minnesota that happened to be Black. And would you talk a little bit about how did you, in the 70s, when female police officers were really unheard of, it wasn't a job that women went for, partly because it was kind of the good old boys job. It was the job that the guys held down. how did you get walked into this position as the first female officer in the state of Minnesota?
Well, thank you so much. At the time, I was a city planner for the city of St. Paul, and I had a master's degree in urban planning, urban law from the Humphrey School. And
Wow.
I was doing budgeting and stuff. And Ron Jones, who was the EEO officer for the city, said to me, because there had been a lawsuit put on by the NAACP in 1970, because there were 600 police officers and there were only 4 African Americans. And so
Wow.
when they put the lawsuit in, Miles Lord, the Attorney General, said a percentage of whatever your next class is has to be African American. So at the time, this was in 1974, they posted the test and 2,000 people, now they hadn't hired for 4 years. And so 2,000 people signed up for the test. And I think it was like 250 women signed up. And Ron Jones said, Debbie, I need you to take this test because you're the only woman I know that could pass it, because it was the West Point military physical agility test. We had to run 25 yards, get over a 4-foot wall, run 25 yards, get over a 6-foot fence wall, run 25 yards, climb a ladder, you're down into a cylinder and you got to get out. And it's a timed obstacle course. And so anyway, out of the 200 and so females that took the test, I was the only female. I was a jock in my younger days. I was the only female that passed, and only 8 men did better than I did. And so I was offered the job. And I said, well, wait a minute. I just did you a favor by just taking the test. I don't want the job. It's a $10,000 cut in pay. You know, I got a master's degree. You only needed a GED to be a police officer. And so there's a letter in my file saying, thank you for the opportunity to take the test, but no, I don't want the job. Well, what happened that Friday before the academy was supposed to start, it was a court-ordered class. There were 50, and Miles Lord said 10 of the 50 had to be African Americans. The Friday before the academy was going to start, one of the African American men dropped out. The only person the mayor had control of was me, because I was a city employee. He says, I'm going to put you on leave, and I need you to sit in the academy so we can get this academy started. And I said, well, wait a minute, there's a difference in pay. What are you going? Don't worry, you'll be taken care of. I always say don't trust a politician, because I'll talk about that later. Anyway, that Saturday, this is on a Friday. Saturday, I'm at Uniforms Unlimited downtown trying to get fitted into a man's uniform. And they're cutting off shirt tails and putting stuff in the back because we had a posterior, and cutting off sleeves, and the tie was hanging down longer than me, and had men's shoes and a hat. I looked like Clarabelle the Clown. I don't know where that first picture was at, but I tell you, it was interesting. And then I showed up in the first day in the academy, and here I am, the only woman, and sitting there. And I physically had to share a locker room with 21 men. They didn't even have a women's locker room. And just off the record, men's bathrooms are not clean. That's all I can share with you. But so anyway, I'm in the academy. Academically, I'm at the top of the academy. Physically, I'm doing what the average man can do. And I'm just kind of trying to keep a low profile and just get through this 16-week academy. And I'm constantly being challenged by the administration, by my fellow officers. It was just a challenge. And as it was going on, the other 9 African-American men, at the time, I was married and had my 4 kids, and my youngest was 2 at the time. And I would come home from the academy, we'd have dinner, I'd take care of what the kids had to do, and then I would go tutor the other 9 African-American men, because they were having some issues with the quizzes that we were having every day. And I was pretty good at figuring out what the questions were going to be on the quizzes. So, you know, we all kind of got them passed and stuff like that. But that was an interesting time, trying to juggle a family, work with my fellow cadets, and just trying to get along with everybody to make sure everybody's being successful.
You know,
What is-
Debbie, you've alluded to what I'm interested in hearing more about, but as the first of many things in your life, the first Black woman, first woman, being on the city council in St. Paul, I'd like to hear a little bit more about the worst of the worst experiences and the best of the best experiences that you've had. What pops out when, and start with the worst so we can end with the best.
Well, thank you for that. I think it was interesting, just the challenges in the academy, trying to get through that. And then we had a 36-week field training where every 5 weeks we would get trained by another field training officer. And some of my training officers were not supportive at all. I mean, it was not easy riding in a squad car with somebody that really didn't want to be in a car with you. And then there were some that were really supportive, a couple of them that, I to this day I think highly of, that were, at least willing to give me a chance and to try to tell me some things that they saw that were strengths and some things that they thought I should work on and things like that. So, that was some of the challenges initially in the field training. And once I got done with that, I decided, I really don't want this job, but I've now went through the academy. and the field training, and we didn't have real bullets in our gun. And I didn't get to drive the squad car with the red lights and sirens. I said, well, I need to get some of this real work so I can at least say I did it. So I decided I was going to go try to actually have bullets in my gun and drive the squad car. So my first day out after the academy and after the field training, I get in the squad car with this guy. I get behind the wheel. They had bench seats in, they didn't have bucket seats. I pull the seat up so I can get to the steering wheel. The guy next to me, 6 feet tall, he tells me, get out of there and go sit over in the passenger seat because I wasn't going to be driving. And so for the majority of my opportunity on the street, I didn't get to drive the squad car and turn the red lights and sirens on because I was 5'6" and 3/4. So most of the guys are 6 feet tall and they weren't going to let me drive. So that was one of the things. But it was very interesting because I think one of the things they noticed is that women were more communicative. We weren't the slam, bam, thank you, ma'am people. We just kind of, I'd go into a domestic with, hey, listen, tell me what is the problem. Let me understand what's going on here because I need you all to calm down so we can kind of get this worked out. Because if you all keep fighting, somebody's going to go to jail. And I need you all to kind of straighten up here. And so I'm always trying to negotiate and look. So some of that was kind of interesting. It wasn't about, how many arrests can you make? I was a problem solver. Okay, let's figure out, let's look at what's going on and try to solve the problem. And so that was kind of interesting. I got pretty good marks on that part, but it was challenging. But those were some of the things that I did when I was there. And then when they finally got me off of the field training and I was out driving where I had a squad car, none of the officers wanted to work with me. So they put me in a one-person squad car in the highest crime area in the city when everybody else had 2 men in it. And, I give the example of the first call I got was to a loud party, and it was at the Hell's Outcast headquarters on Albemarle in front. And here are these motorcycles all lined up around the block. The music's blasting and these big bikers, and they got beer in their hands. And I was the one car. The one car is 211, 111, 311, all of that. And interesting, I bring that up because and I have a map somewhere where all the one cars were the African-American cars. And we were the first cars out to call. So it was kind of some things were happening behind the scenes while we were still trying to do our job. So anyway, back to the loud party call, my first call. I'm afraid to get out of the car, but I'm in a mark squad. I know I got to get out. So I walk over to the fence, and here's this big biker, and he's got a beer in his hand. And I said, "Excuse me, sir, can you tell me who's in charge of this party?" And he looks me up and down and says, and I won't say the exact words he said, "I've never blanked a police officer before." And I put my hand on my gun and said, "You're not doing that to one today neither." And got on the radio and called a signal 13, which is officer needs help. So you could hear sirens coming from all over because nobody had come to back me up when I got the call, and they knew what it was. And then, now the gang of blues coming in to try to deal with the problem. So I that's just a sample of some of the stuff that I encountered on my journey on this job.
Wow.
Well, how did your husband? I mean, now you got to go home and try to leave all that behind. What did your husband? How did he go along with all this?
Well, it's kind of interesting that you brought that up because it got to the place. I used to come home and I tell him what was going on and everything, and he was ready to kill people. The people I was working with, he was just up. So I stopped coming home and sharing the stories because it wasn't going to end well. And I just figured, well, I just wouldn't tell the stories of what was going on, and I'd share it with my other fellow officers, some of the things I had during the tour, but I didn't.
Not your husband.
Bringing it home.
Yeah, well, yeah, that is because sometimes, yes, your loving protector will say, "Hey, not my wife." Yes. Well, I have known you to do so much community work, from the NAACP to community development to development of people who are wanting to do many of the work that you are doing. How are you preparing to pass the baton? As a woman who is a mentor, who is a legend, there has to be, and as I know in the African American community, we believe in the model of the Sankofa. We look forward, but we also look back and we pull people with us. How are you cultivating that next generation? We've got a few minutes, but how do you cultivate that next generation so that there's another powerful Deb Montgomery, many years, into time?
Well, thank you for that question. Interesting. I've been teaching part-time for the last 25 years. So I've taught the whole post course through the Minnesota State College system. I've taught at Inver Hills, Minneapolis Community College, North Hennepin, most of the colleges I've taught through. And I've taught the whole criminal justice course. My last class that I've been teaching recently is ethics theory and service learning. And that is the bread basket of what police officers and people need to deal with. How do you bring all of that together? What are your personal ethics, and how do you support people and uplift people? And I've taught this class now for over the last, I'd say 7 to 8 years at college level. And to be honest with you, this new generation of young people, it's kind of an interesting group of people. I have literally failed people, and I'm the last class of a 2-year program. And I have literally failed people. And the deans have gotten mad at me. Well, they've been through this program for 2 years. I said, well, here, you read this paper and tell me what you get out of it, because I'm struggling right now. And the conversations that I'm hearing don't show me any empathy, no growth, no understanding. And surprisingly, they didn't fire me, but it's a challenge because the goal of college is graduation, and the goal of me is a quality product. And obviously, the two were having a little conflict going on. But I was not going to put my name on somebody that I wouldn't want patrolling my community and uplifting the people that I know need to be uplifted. And so that's some of the stuff that I did just recently, besides I'm on several boards and things like that. So I'm engaged in the community and a church going person. So I believe in God and the 10 Commandments and try to deal with that.
Debbie, you know, we've only got a couple of minutes left. Would you please let us know what you would say to young women of any background? What would be the one or two qualities that will stand out for them to practice to be a great leader, as you have been your whole life?
First of all, believe in yourself. Understand yourself first. I mean, you can't understand other people if you don't understand yourself, your upbringing, your values, your commitment. What is your dedication? What is your role in life? Look at the strengths that you have and bring them forward. And then look at the weaknesses you have. Be very honest. What are you really weak in? And then look at people that have their strength and your weakness to figure out how you can uplift yourself to a higher level. I mean, those are the kinds of things that I constantly am trying to share with young people. God put us all here with special talents. I mean, identify them, share those, uplift people with your strengths, and then understand I'm not good at everything. But guess what? If there's something like some of the boards I'm on, if there's something that comes up and it's not my area of expertise, you know, Billy over here is really good in that. And why don't we listen to his insight and then try to understand what he sees and is saying? Those are the things that I try to get people to say. We're not all things to all people, but we are important on the things that we do bring to the table.
Wow. Well, you know what? I want you to know we could talk to you for another 2 hours, but we only have about 25 seconds. I want to thank you for being with us and sharing your story. We got a glimpse into the beautiful life, the beautiful, satisfying life of Deb Montgomery. I want all of you listeners and watchers out there to be inspired by a powerful woman who stepped out in faith, who really trusted and believed in the gifts that she was given because she had the support of the community. We want to thank you so much for being with us today, and welcome again to It's a Woman's World.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.